Imagine an old gardener on a space station, mocked by young warriors for the faded tattoo on his arm. Until the most feared general in the galaxy enters, salutes him, and reveals a truth so powerful it changes everything. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The orbital station Helios Arc 9 drifted above a pale world, its metal towers catching the amber light of twin suns. From far away, it looked like a crown circling the planet. Inside, in a quiet hydroponics bay, an old man named Bram Halcyon worked with steady hands. At 92 years of age, Bram was not a soldier anymore. He was a gardener. Yet every movement he made carried the memory of storms he had survived. Among rows of alien ferns and glass-leaf vines, he had coaxed something rare into bloom. Small roses from Earth, their red petals glowing softly in the artificial light. For Bram, these roses were more than flowers. They were reminders of home, of resilience, and of what could grow even in metal soil. Many who passed by the bay saw them as simple curiosities, but to Bram, they were proof that life could flourish anywhere. The calm did not last. Footsteps echoed against the deck, heavy and confident. Rukar, a tall Velith trainee, entered with two companions. His reptilian scales shimmered purple with amusement. Beside him came Silvraket, a four-armed quartzid with crystalline skin that sparkled like glass under the lamps. The third was Vexel, a Lumian whose silver surface flickered with sparks of bioelectric light. All three were candidates for the Emperor's elite guard, and all three had learned to carry themselves with careless authority. Rukar's voice carried through the bay. "Old human," he said, "you waste time making weeds grow. Earth's relics have no place here." Bram kept adjusting the nutrient valve, his expression calm. He had heard this tone before. Soldiers in training often sought easy targets, and he was the easiest of all. His gray hair was thin, his eyes clouded, and his steps slower than theirs. But there was a steadiness in him, the kind that does not shake. Rukar's gaze dropped to Bram's forearm, where his sleeve had slipped. There, faded and blurred by time, was a tattoo. It showed a stardrake, wings wide, breathing a stream of stars, with 3 small moons above its head. The lines were not sharp, but the shape was still clear. Silvercat laughed, his crystalline plates flashing. "A child's drawing," he mocked. "It looks like a space lizard." Vexel tilted her head, sparks dancing across her hands. "What does it mean, Gardener? Did you mark yourself out of boredom?" Bram paused. His fingers rested on the edge of the rosebed. He looked at them with quiet patience. "It is a memory," he said. His voice was low, rough with age, but it carried something heavier than sound. Rukar sneered and stepped closer. "A memory of weakness. This station is for warriors, not for fossils who draw pictures on their skin." With one swift motion, he grabbed Bram's arm. His grip was strong enough to break bones. The crowd around them, a mix of workers and young officers, grew tense. Some humans in the group recognized the set of Bram's shoulders, the way his gaze shifted, but the trainees saw only fragility. Bram lifted his eyes. Through the mist of cataracts, there flickered something else, a light not easily named. "You are pressing too hard," he said calmly. "Even roses dislike sudden shadows." Rukar pushed him forward, toward the security desk. Vexel laughed softly, sparks leaping across her arms. Silvercat raised a recorder, eager to capture the moment of mockery. "Let us see what the officers say," Rukar muttered. "Maybe they will send you back to Earth with your little drawing." Above the bay, on the observation deck, Commander Meridian of the Dracori Legion watched closely. Her species carried perfect memory, every detail stored with crystalline clarity. When she saw the tattoo, something in her recollections screamed for recognition. She had seen that emblem long ago in sealed files, buried in archives that spoke of impossible missions. She did not hesitate. Her hand trembled slightly as she keyed in a code she had not used in decades. "Connect me to the Lord Commander," she ordered. Now, down below, Bram allowed the trainees to push him along. He spoke softly, almost as if to himself. "I once knew a Velith pilot, young like you. He believed his heritage made him untouchable. But when the void opened and his ship tore apart, all his marks could not shield him." Rukar stiffened for a moment, then forced a laugh. "Stories," he said. "Legends made for weak minds." The checkpoint doors opened. The Thraxian officers standing there looked uneasy, but they said nothing. Rukar shoved Bram toward them, voice sharp. "This human trespasses. Deal with him." Before the officers could reply, alarms shrieked across the bay. The lights shifted to deep amber. The deck shook with the low horn that meant only one thing: the arrival of Imperial Command. Everyone froze. From the main entrance, a formation of black and gold guards marched in precise rhythm. Behind them walked a figure whose presence bent the air itself. Tall, scaled in crimson, with golden eyes that seemed to see through walls. The bay fell silent. Trainees bowed, workers lowered their heads, and even the security officers knelt. Only Bram remained standing, his hand resting on the rosebed, steady as ever. Lord Commander Viridian Kale crossed the bay in 3 measured steps. He stopped before the old human and studied him. Then, with a motion sharp and perfect, he raised his arm in salute. "Sergeant Major Bram Halcyon," the general said, voice like distant thunder, "Stardrake on. I'm honored by your presence." And in that moment, the quiet garden became the stage for a truth long buried. The hydroponics bay of Helios Arc 9 was silent, as though even the air itself waited. The rows of flowers, the humming machines, and the scattered workers all seemed frozen in place. In that silence, Lord Commander Viridian Kale stood before Bram Halcyon. The towering general, scaled in deep crimson, raised his arm in a salute so flawless it looked like it had been carved into the galaxy itself. For a moment, no one dared breathe. The gesture seemed to bend the very weight of the room. The young soldiers who had mocked the old gardener a moment earlier now trembled, their arrogance melting away like ice under a burning sun. Everyone knew what it meant for the supreme commander of the Emperor's forces to salute. It was not ceremony. It was recognition. It was respect. Bram did not move at first. His tired eyes blinked slowly as though waking from a long dream. The roses beside him swayed under the recycled air, and he touched them lightly as if grounding himself. Then he let out a quiet sigh. "That was a long time ago, General," he said. "A different war." Viridian's golden eyes locked on him. His voice rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. "Time does not erase courage, nor does it erase debt." The crowd stirred, whispers rising and falling. Workers looked at one another, confused and curious. Many of them had heard legends whispered late at night, stories of the Dragon Brigade, humans who had faced impossible odds. But legends were only tales until that very moment. Now, a frail gardener stood recognized by the Empire's most feared commander. Rukar, Silvraket, and Vexel tried to remain still, but the tremor in their bodies betrayed them. The memory of their insults hung heavy, and shame replaced their laughter. Viridian turned his gaze toward them, and it felt like gravity itself pressed harder on their shoulders. "You 3, he said, his tone low and sharp. "Stand." They obeyed at once, stiff and pale with fear. The general began to walk slowly, each footstep echoing like a drumbeat. "Do you know who this man is?" His words cut through the silence. "No, sir," Rukar managed, his voice weak. "Then you will learn." Viridian's voice carried the weight of history. He spoke of the Void Scourge, the creatures from the black between galaxies who fed on energy and left only emptiness behind. He told of the Alliance fleets shattered, of the 7th Armada broken to fragments. He described the moment when all hope had collapsed, until 3 humans stepped forward. Bram listened in silence, his face unreadable. Viridian spoke of the old cargo hauler, patched with worn metal and armed with mining charges. He told how those 3 pilots had flown straight into the maw of the enemy mothership using outdated rockets, manual thrusters, and sheer stubborn will. The chance of survival had been less than a fraction of a breath, yet somehow they had endured. They carried this mark, Viridian said, pointing to Bram's faded tattoo. A star drake, wings spread, 3 moons above its head. They called themselves the Dragon Brigade. Gasps echoed through the bay. Some of the older humans in the crowd exchanged glances. They had heard fragments of the story, but never with such clarity. Bram shifted, lowering himself onto a bench. His voice was soft, almost weary. We were just soldiers who refused to stop. Nothing more. The general's gaze softened, though his towering presence remained. You are wrong, Sergeant Major. You were more than soldiers. You were the line between survival and oblivion. He turned back to the trainees, his eyes narrowing. And you mocked him. You insulted the one who saved every world you call home. Rukar's scales shifted from purple to a sickly green. Silverket's crystalline form dimmed, and Vexel's sparks sputtered uncertainly. Viridian's voice dropped, quieter but more dangerous. Strength is not in your bloodlines, nor in your training. It is in the courage to act when death is certain. Learn this, or you will never be worthy of the Emperor's guard. The young soldiers could only bow their heads in shame. Around the bay, respect grew, like fire catching dry grass. Workers who had once dismissed the gardener now looked at him with new eyes. Even the Imperial Guards, drilled into perfect discipline, stood straighter, as if witnessing something holy. Bram reached again for his roses. His fingers brushed the petals, delicate and alive. The past does not matter now, he murmured. What matters is what we grow next. Yet his words only deepened the moment. The salute still hung in the air, invisible but powerful, like a new gravity reshaping the room. From that day forward, whispers spread through Helios Arc 9, whispers of the salute that changed gravity, whispers of an old man who had once carried a galaxy on his shoulders and chose instead to carry roses. The next morning on Helios Arc 9 began with the usual hum of machinery, the endless rhythm of life inside an orbital city. But in the hydroponics bay, the air carried something heavier. People walked slower, eyes drawn to the corner where Bram Halcyon tended his roses. What they had witnessed the day before, the salute of Lord Commander Viridian Kale, still echoed through their thoughts. The roses themselves stood brighter under the lamps, as if reflecting the new respect growing around them. Some whispered that the flowers had absorbed the moment, that gardens could carry memories just as people did. Bram, however, worked with the same patience as always. He checked the soil levels, trimmed the stems, and adjusted the nutrient lines. His hands trembled slightly with age, yet his focus was steady. To him, the roses were not trophies of honor, but living things that required care, no matter what storms swirled outside their leaves. Still, he felt the weight of eyes. Workers, officers, even young recruits came to see him. They did not mock now. They watched quietly, as if waiting for a story to rise from the petals. It was Jalen Morrow, a young mechanic barely out of training, who finally stepped forward. "Sir," he said carefully, "is it true? Were you part of the Dragon Brigade?" Bram did not look up immediately. His fingers brushed across a thorn, drawing a tiny line of red on his skin. Only then did he answer, "Yes, though we never called ourselves that. We were just 3 humans trying not to die too quickly." The small crowd leaned closer, drawn to the plain honesty in his tone. Bram's voice grew quiet, carrying the rhythm of memory. The Void Scourge were not enemies you could fight with pride. They swallowed fleets, They learned every weapon we threw at them. Entire systems fell, silent as graves. We had no chance. But there was a gap, a moment we could use. So we flew an old cargo hauler, stuffed with mining charges, right into the heart of their mothership. His words settled like stones into the air. Jalen frowned. But history says the Seventh Fleet destroyed it. Bram gave a faint smile. History prefers neat endings, but truth is never neat. We weren't heroes. We were desperate. We chose to act because no one else could in that moment. His hand touched the tattoo on his arm, the faded star drake. We marked ourselves so we would remember, not for others, not for glory, just so that if we died, we would die as something more than nameless soldiers. Commander Meridian of the Dracori Legion entered quietly, her long frame moving with grace. She had been the first to recognize the symbol yesterday, and now she listened in silence. For her people, memory was permanent, every moment stored with perfect clarity. Yet even she felt something stir in her heart, something beyond memory. Respect. She spoke softly. Your mission saved the Kepler systems. Entire worlds live because of your choice. Bram shook his head. It was not just us. Hundreds fought. Thousands gave everything. We were only one small part of the storm. But those gathered could hear what he left unsaid. Sometimes the smallest part of a storm determines whether it destroys or passes. Rukar, Silvercat, and Vexel stood at the edge of the crowd. Shame still weighed on them. Their earlier cruelty now exposed for all to see. Yet they did not leave. They listened, faces set with a seriousness that had not been there before. Bram's story flowed like water, plain and steady. He described the silence inside the cargo ship. The way the three of them laughed, because it was easier than screaming. He described the fire of the explosion, the impossible survival in a pod meant for hours that lasted days. He described opening his eyes and realizing he was alive when he should not have been. Since then, he said, looking at the roses, I chose to plant instead of destroy. Thunder fades, but gardens can remember. Every flower is a reminder that something once lived through chaos. The crowd stood quiet. The hum of the machines, the only sound. Commander Meridian broke the silence. The Emperor has ended the secrecy. The truth will be revealed soon. The galaxy will finally know. Bram sighed. Then let them know this. We were ordinary, nothing more. If they call us legends, they miss the point. The lesson is that anyone, even the weakest, can choose to act when it matters. The workers nodded slowly. The message was clear, simple, and unshakable. As the crowd dispersed, many left something near the roses. A small trinket, a badge, a shard of crystal. Offerings, not to worship, but to honor. The hydroponics bay became more than a garden that day. It became a living memory. Bram knelt once more, his old bones aching, and whispered to the roses, remember the thunder, but grow toward the light. And with that, the garden carried the weight of war, yet bloomed with peace. The day began quietly on Helios Arc 9. Lights dimmed from night cycle to morning glow, and the station's endless corridors hummed with routine. In the hydroponics bay, Bram Halcyon was already at work. His old hands guided water through roots, checked the soil balance, and trimmed petals from the roses he had nurtured. To him, every flower was a reminder of survival, of resilience, and of patience. But this morning felt different. The air was heavy with expectation, and the silence seemed too deep. Bram sensed it long before he heard the footsteps. Imperial guards entered first, their black and gold armor shining under the bay lamps. They moved with exact rhythm, creating a path. Behind them walked a figure rarely seen outside the palace, Emperor Alarian himself. The Emperor wore no crown, only plain robes woven with threads of faint light. His presence was not loud or overwhelming, but it filled the space with a weight beyond words. Every worker, every officer, Every recruit in the bay dropped to one knee. Even Commander Meridian bowed her tall frame with respect. Only Bram remained standing, his hands stained with soil, his eyes clouded, yet calm. Alarion stepped forward until he stood among the roses. He bent slightly, studying the blooms as though they carried secrets older than the Empire. "They are beautiful," he said softly. "Life, drawn from dust and steel." Bram gave a small nod. "They're stubborn, much like people." The Emperor's golden gaze lingered on him. "I watched the recordings. I heard the salute of my Lord Commander. The galaxy will soon know the truth about the Dragon Brigade." But before that, I wanted to see the man myself, the one who chose to plant roses after thunder. The crowd listened, holding their breath. Bram wiped his hands on his worn coveralls. "I am no legend, Your Majesty. I am only an old soldier who grew tired of destruction." Alarion shook his head. "You are more than that. You remind us that strength is not only in battle, but in creation. The Empire is built on memory, yet memory fades. Flowers, however, carry life forward. Your garden speaks louder than statues." He walked slowly among the rows, his fingers brushing lightly across petals. Around him, guards and officers remained silent, as though time itself had paused. Bram spoke again, his tone quiet but firm. "Scars matter, Emperor. They remind us of what we survived. If we hide them, we forget, and forgetting makes us weaker." Alarion looked at him closely. "You carry scars, seen and unseen, yet you still choose to grow." "Because destruction is easy," Bram replied. "Creation requires faith that tomorrow will come. I may not live to see these roses reach their full bloom, but someone will. That is reason enough." The Emperor nodded. "Wisdom is rarer than power. And today, I came not as a ruler, but as a student." His words sent murmurs through the crowd, for emperors were not known to lower themselves. He turned to the recruits who had once mocked Bram. "You saw only weakness in this man. Now you see what strength truly is. Respect must be earned, not demanded." His gaze was sharp, yet his voice carried no anger, only a lesson carved deep. Rukar, Silvraket, and Vexel bowed their heads, their pride stripped away. In that moment, they were no longer arrogant trainees, but students of humility. Alarion returned to Bram's side. "The galaxy will learn of your deeds. But I ask you this, will you tend a garden in the Imperial Palace? A place where veterans, recruits, and even rulers may walk among flowers, and remember that courage takes many forms." Bram smiled faintly, his weathered face softening. "I thank you, Majesty, but my duty is here. These recruits need someone to remind them that pride can weigh more than armor. I can do that better among soil than in palaces." Alarion's eyes glimmered with quiet understanding. "Then so be it. But know this, the Empire will carry your story. It will be taught not as myth, but as truth. The Dragon Brigade will no longer remain shadows in history." The Emperor stood tall once more, yet his voice softened as he looked around the garden. "Let this place be known as the Garden of Memory. Here, thunder becomes roses. Here, scars become lessons. Here, an old man shows us that even the smallest seed can grow into something greater than war." With that, he turned and departed, his guards following. The bay remained hushed long after he had gone. Bram knelt again by the roses, his fingers brushing the soil. He whispered as if to the flowers, "Remember thunder, but keep growing toward the light." And so the Garden of Memory was born, a place where the galaxy learned that true power was not in the force of arms, but in the quiet courage to create.